Test one, two. Hello. How's everyone there? Out there in wherever you may be. It is Thursday, August 29th, and thank you for joining me. This is Pete, live in DC. I'm going to be covering a few different topics tonight, but I'm going to try and make it quick because the first interview by Harris and Walz is going to be given tonight since they won the nomination in about half an hour. So let's get started in one more minute. Wait for a couple more people to join us. I'm eating some ice cream right now. That is delicious vanilla ice cream. Okay, thank you everyone for joining me. Um, there I am. Am I on camera? So I should be centered more. There. Thank you for joining me. This is Pete, live from Washington, D.C. It's August 29th, Thursday. In half an hour, um, presidential nominee Kamala Harris and her vice presidential running mate Tim Walz are going to be giving their first interview since they won the Democratic nomination. And yeah, on CNN in half an hour. So let's get through this. First item up is that there was 5 or 6 days ago a Maryland state. No, not Montgomery County, which is in Maryland, just outside of D.C. Montgomery County police officer was convicted for some violence at the Capitol on January 6th, which everyone knows now is an attempted insurrection, overthrow of the 2020 elections. And this guy, young guy, 26-year-old Justin Lee, just outside of D.C. He's on the Montgomery County Police Department, and he's been on unpaid leave since being arrested and charged. And 6 days ago, he was convicted. Let's see if I can bring up that story. Here we are. Yes, Maryland police officer convicted of tossing smoke bomb at police during Capitol riot. A Maryland police officer was convicted on Friday, so it was 1 week ago today, of charges that he joined a mob's January 6, 2021 attack on the Capitol and hurled a smoke bomb and other objects at police officers guarding a tunnel entrance. U.S. District Judge Trevor McFadden heard 2 days of trial testimony without a jury this week before he found Montgomery County police officer Justin Lee guilty of 2 felonies and 3 misdemeanors. The judge, who also acquitted Lee of 2 other misdemeanors, is scheduled to sentence him on November 22nd. I'm going to cover that sentencing. Lee, 26, ignited and threw a smoke bomb into the tunnel entrance of the Capitol's Lower West Terrace. Okay, so that's where some of the most intense, because I've gone to many of these January 6 trials now. The Lower West Terrace tunnel entrance was where some of the most heinous violence happened that day. Like, some guys were using like flagpoles, there were like metal pipes, and they were spraying bear spray into cops, like inches away from a cop's face, and spraying bear spray into them. This massive violence was in that spot. So he was there at the Lower West Terrace tunnel entrance, where a mob of rioters attacked a group of unnumbered police officers. The device the smoke bomb he threw, struck a police officer's riot shield and filled the mouth of the tunnel with a large plume of smoke. No police officers should have to endure these attacks and provocations, McFadden says. So on November 26th, this young guy who's been on unpaid uh, leave, unpaid suspension, basically, for the Montgomery County Police, is going to be sentenced. I am almost positive he's been fired by the Montgomery County Police now that he has been convicted. Um, so we'll see what kind of sentence he gets, and I'm going to investigate a little bit to confirm that Montgomery County Police have indeed fired him. Um, so, anyways, the next topic. Let me see. I'm trying to. It keeps coming back. Let's get rid of that. So, anyways, the next topic I was going to talk about is the ascendus, the Trump re-indictment. So, Jack Smith, Special Prosecutor Jack Smith, had to refile his case against Donald Trump before a federal judge here in D.C., Tanya Chutkan, and he removed a few of the charges, but most of the charges he kept intact. So he had to change it a little bit and refile um, the case in light of the Supreme Court's ruling that the president has quite a bit of immunity for official acts as a president, but he does not have immunity for acts that is not part of discharging his official duties as president. So when he was encouraging a mob to go to the Capitol to help save his failed um, candidacy, that was obviously not part of an official duty of a president. Um, so that case will go forward, but maybe not if Donald Trump is able to win the election of 2024 and get back into the White House. Then it will most likely go away. He'll order his Justice Department to dismiss it. Um, so, yeah. And then the other issue I was going to discuss was the ascendancy of Harris and Walz. They are doing quite well. Um, polls I've been looking at 538 and a couple other sites, these basically aggregate sites where they take the average of all the polls coming out. And I said I wasn't going to spend too much time on polling until after Labor Day. Well, that's Monday, so it's coming up very soon. But I just wanted to say that the trend line looks like, compared to where Biden was and where Harris is now, and it even looks like the most recent film. It looks like she is getting a slight bump coming out of the Democratic convention in Chicago. But compared to where Biden was, generally there's like a 10 to 14 point increase from where Biden was to where Harris is. So instead of Trump being ahead by 10 points on average, now Harris is ahead by 2, maybe even 3 percentage points. Um, and this Politico story here is very interesting. It talks about basically this trend and the ascendancy of Harris Walz. Kamala Harris's surge in recent polls is a stunning political turnaround. The story behind her burst of momentum, as told by the polling crosstabs, is even more remarkable. Less than a month ago, Democrats faced a grim election landscape. President Joe Biden faced trouble with independents and his base, and former President Donald Trump looks set to return to the White House. The ticket switch that saw Biden withdraw and Harris ascend to the Democratic nomination has reset the race by every campaign measure. In an attempt to understand how widespread and sharp the Democratic rebound has been since Biden dropped out of the race, we dug into the crosstabs with the highest rated pollsters have found during this extraordinary period in American politics with each demographic group. We measured the swing between pollsters' final pre-dropout survey with Biden and the race, their most recent post-dropout survey featuring Harris. So Harris gains support across demographics compared to Biden. It's talking about overall, Harris is 5 points higher than Biden. I've seen as many as 10. Okay, um, this is an average of some of the most respected pollsters, I guess. So 5 points ahead of where Biden was. She's 9 point. That's overall. She's 9 points ahead amongst independents. Now that's crucially important for general elections. I always emphasize the importance of trying to win over the independents. You're trying to win the presidency. You have to win the independent voters. I believe there are 40 to 42% of registered voters in this country are independent. That is larger block than Democrats, which I think are 39 or 40, and Republicans, which are somewhere 37, 36, 37%. Among black voters, Harris is 12 percentage points ahead of where Biden was. Hispanic voters, she's 6 percentage points ahead of where Biden was. Um, Young voters, she's 17 points ahead of where Biden was. Now, a lot of times, younger voters don't turn out to vote, so the get out to vote drive for the Harris campaign, I think, really needs to focus on younger voters, getting them out there, because that's huge. 17 percentage points above where Biden was amongst young voters. I wonder where they consider young voters. Probably 30 and younger, or 29 and younger. Probably that's usually the cutoff range, 29 or 30. Among women voters, seven percentage points higher. That's not too terribly surprising since she is a woman. Among college educated voters, Harris is 3 percentage points above where Biden was. And amongst non college educated, so this is important, she's 5 percentage points above Biden. Why I say non college educated is important is because that's Donald Trump's really big demographic. Um, a big portion of his base are non-college educated. So if she can start cutting into that, that's good. Then it goes on, says Harris has registered gains across a wide range of demographic categories, but the improvement has been especially pronounced among young voters. Yeah, as I said. A spike among non-white voters. Biden had held up surprisingly well with white voters given his diminished position overall, but his standing with non-white voters of all stripes was at an all-time low among modern Democratic presidential candidates. That's not good. It's not good at all. So she's turning that around rather significantly. Biden was only winning black voters by 50 points. That's bad for a Democrat. Uh, She's now 30 points further than that. So she's winning black voters by about 70% now. Um, and she has also put North Carolina into play, though Trump is slightly ahead there. I saw earlier today that Harris is now actually slightly ahead in Georgia. Previously, the few days before that, it looked like Trump was still ahead in Georgia. So she's gaining momentum. Like I said, I'm not going to take the polls too seriously until after Monday. Maybe I'll do another video on Tuesday. So my other point I was going to try and make was what is it with um, progressives? I understand, like, radical left folks such as myself not wanting to vote for Harris Walz. But I have the luxury of living in Washington, D.C., and that's where I vote. So they, yeah, Harris, I mean, yeah, Harris does not need my vote in DC. Like, the Democrat always wins Washington, DC by 90 to 92% of the votes. So, um, it can't be emphasized more. If you're like in a deep, deep blue state like that and you're a true progressive, yes, vote for the Green Party. Try and start building an alternative. Though I don't see Jill Stein getting the 5% to get to federal matching funds, it's still worth the effort, I think, if you're in a deep blue state, which are also some of the most populous states, such as New York and California, that can help build the Greens to start getting to that point of the 5% of the vote, which would then trigger the federal matching funds. So that's, building an alternative. If you're a true left progressive, that's the way to go. However, harm minimization is also a thing. And so there I am. Put myself back on screen. So I understand, and I encourage you to vote strategically. So if you're in one of the swing states, definitely, I would vote for Harris Walz if I was there. I definitely, definitely would. Harm minimization is a thing. Um, the Trump MAGA cult is real, scary, and very fascist. So that's what we're up against. So vote strategically and realize that harm minimization is a thing. But why are progressives so, like, when you get into these conversations with them, they're so negative. They're like, both candidates are horrible. They're both fascists. Well, they're not both fascists. I mean, the Democrats are neoliberal, which is pretty awful. Um, but it's not hardcore fascist. It's not going to drag us backwards several decades for women, for us queers, for people of color. It. So that's what I mean by harm minimizations. We don't want to go back several decades. That's not really an option. So again, think about it. And if you're in one of the swing states, please, please, you got to vote Harris Walz. Thank you. I'm going to sign off here. But I was one last point because I didn't really get at the issue of hope. But why? Why are progressives so? They're so used to losing on issues. Maybe that's why we get negative and cynical, and it's like when we're talking, and sometimes it sounds like we've lost all hope. And in some communities, that really doesn't play well. You're not winning people over. You're not persuading anybody by being a Debbie Downer and being extremely negative and not showing any hope for a better future. And really, it's how we organize together in communities of resistance. What we do day in, day out, that goes way, way, way beyond electoral politics. Election day is only one day. What are you doing the other 364 days of the year is what I always ask. And how are we building communities of resistance? And Harris Walls, we're going to have to protest them. We're going to have to get out in the street. We want to end the genocide in Gaza. Well, it's going to take a lot of work. But let's be hopeful about it. Let's unite and not turn off other communities and demographics because we are stuck in this weird kind of like cynicism that almost and hopelessness that almost borders on nihilism. Like, let's be hopeful about something. And let's try and unite and work together way beyond election day. Okay. Thanks a lot for joining me. That's all I have to say about that, my little rant. Hope everybody has a good night. And like I said, I'll try and do one on Tuesday and I'll start taking the polls a little more seriously at that point. Because traditionally it's always been like people are not really paying attention to the summer, that the polls should be taken more seriously because people are more engaged in the election and listening to the issues. And hopefully, this interview that's going to happen in about 12 minutes on CNN, uh, Harris and Walz will specifically talk about some issues and the policy plans that they want to put forward. Because that's, again, what independents, especially in swing voters, are looking for. So thanks for joining me.